Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. In this episode, I'm not going to respond again, because I have already, to the story that the baby isn't Chris Watts's, or that he wants DNA results or something like that. I think it's quite clear that if you look at the phone data review, Shanann wanted to stay married to Chris Watts. She felt that the baby was his. You can clearly see that. And also, she was in love with her husband. She wrote him a love letter and all that kind of thing. In the same way that there are texts and calls constantly to Nicole Kessinger from Chris Watts, there's just none of that with Shanann. So that's the one side of that story. That I actually think the whole thing is kind of a game where the defense side, if you want to call it that, are trying to create a scenario where people are going to be thinking things. I think there's a reason why certain information can't be released. It's because of an agreement. I think the plea deal also involved an agreement on what would be kept from the public. And so when you then come afterwards and you say, well, release this information, if you know that it can't be released, that is going to create this impression that the information is negative. Can I put it that way? Anyway, in this particular episode, I'm going to just do a little bit of fact checking on the issue of when was the media alerted about the situation with the Watts family, and who alerted the media. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed, please do. You can click on the icon on the bottom right of your screen, like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So I'm not going to waste any time getting to the point answering this question. It's quite simple. If you go to Discovery page 937, it is part of the warrantless arrest affidavit. It's part of the case narrative, the basic case narrative of the Chris Watts case, is that early in the morning, Tuesday morning, so the 14th of August, at about 7 o'clock in the morning, the lead detective learned that neither Shanann nor the girls had returned to the residence. And then Detective Baumhover requested an immediate press release be issued and initiated assistance from the CBI and ultimately the FBI. So it was actually kind of earlier than that they sort of figured that Shanann hadn't come home. There were calls being made to the Frederick Police Department around about 5 o'clock in the morning already. And there were subsequently meetings held around all of this, and then it was decided to call the media, to literally alert the media. And based on my information, it was Detective Baumhover who actually did that, who reached out to the media. Now, I'm not sure about you. I'm not terribly happy with that information. I think we can do better. So, if you dig a bit deeper in the discovery, you get the report kind of in Detective Baumhover's own words. That's on Discovery page 1075, right? And the reason I prefer this narrative is it's in his own words. There's a little bit more detail. And so if we just sort of zoom in on that, he says on 8/14/18, so Tuesday at approximately 5:45, I read an email from Sergeant Bakes advising Shanann and the girls were still missing. Now, as far as I remember, Bakes was on the night shift, right? And there were no leads to their whereabouts. Shortly before 7 o'clock, I arrived at my office and began drafting a missing persons be on the lookout for a press release. So I find this quite ironic because, it might be normal police protocol to do this, But basically, as a result of sending out this press release, it was basically an email sent to kind of all the local media that this was the kind of situation that was going on. And as a result of this, the media kind of descended on the Watts home mid-morning and started sort of asking questions and all that kind of thing. And eventually they started interviewing Chris Watts on the porch, on camera, and then later on also on the driveway. And that's the famous sermon on the porch. But what is quite interesting is that this was actually a major breakthrough in the case. I think the sermon on the porch was something that the agents got to see before they spoke to Watts. So they saw that Tuesday at about 5 o'clock or so, and then about 2 hours later, Coda called, well, I think it was Baumhover called in Watts, and then he spoke to Coda. Baumhover says that he didn't want to speak to Watts again because he thought Watts would just tell him the same story. So the idea was that he spoke to someone who Watts would think would be completely unfamiliar with the case, and he would have to tell the whole story all over again. And that's exactly what he did. And even though he did that, he then did it again and again and again. The other reason why the sermon on the porch was such a breakthrough was it kind of also put pressure on Nicole Kessinger. I don't think she felt comfortable saying nothing, not coming forward, and all that kind of thing. Another irony regarding the sermon on the porch was that Watts' mother-in-law actually advised him against doing it. So it suggests that at that point, when she said that she was in some way supportive of him, or perhaps didn't think the worst of him, certainly at that point. I think the bottom line is that my impression of the detective is that he's very cynical about the media, that he's very pessimistic and doesn't really hold the media in very high regard. And I do think the media delivered. You know, the media aren't just bad guys. There are certainly rotten apples in the media and opportunists and so on, but there are also people who work hard, who care about the truth, and who care about finding out what is going on. And they certainly pushed the fast forward button by doing this interview. They definitely pushed the fast forward button. And it was quite a good interview as well, just in the sense of they got Watts to talk for 15 minutes. And Watts is kind of a quiet guy, is an introvert. So the fact that they were able to do that is definitely a credit to the journalists who spoke to him. I think Watts also spoke to another friend of his, Christopher Rusk, and said virtually nothing to him except that I shouldn't have talked to the media. So the other question that we kind of want to address here is exactly when did this happen? When was the media contacted? And that's not hard to find. One instance in the discovery is on page 174, where you can kind of see a sample of the press release that was drafted, also the date that it was sent and the time, so it's time stamped. It was sent by Sergeant Bob Bedsall at exactly 2 minutes to 11 in the morning, and this was sent to a whole host of media, and the content of that email was as follows. Hello, this is the press release for the Shanann Watts case that is being inquired about. You can contact me with questions. We don't have any additional information we can release at this time. A majority of our department is working on this case. The same information is also available on the Town of Frederick's website. I will send out any updates that may be gathered throughout the day today at about 3 p.m. And so you can see from that email that the police were very willing to engage with the media, not just sending the email, but also saying, you're free to call us with any questions. On page 176 of the discovery, you can actually see a copy of the missing persons report. Be on the lookout. And it just basically says that Shanann Watts is 34 years old. She has 2 daughters, and she's 15 weeks pregnant. And there's no vehicle associated with the whole thing, and then phone numbers are provided as well. Now, my impression was that the cadaver dog search and the media being there happened around about the middle of the day, just sort of late morning, going into afternoon, right? Now, although this is not really the specific area that we wanted to sort of interrogate in this particular video, I'm just going to dwell on it very quickly just to clear something up. Now, I think a lot of us were under the impression that the cadaver dog search was a failure, that it didn't really serve any purpose, that nothing really came up. But I want to just refer your attention quickly to page 802 of the discovery documents. And it basically says that around 2:33 p.m. I heard from Agent Tammy Lee, who stated that the dog's hit was not substantiated with a second dog, and requested that the alert be sent out. And so they sent an endangered missing alert at 3:20 p.m. So they didn't have those cadaver dogs there because they thought nothing happened. The cadaver dogs were there because they thought that people had possibly died or probably died, and they were right. The part I want to just emphasize here is that one dog did alert. One dog did hit on a particular area, but how it works with their protocol is they need 2 dogs to alert in the same place in order to confirm that, and frustratingly that didn't happen. If we go to another page, it says the Watts residents had cadaver dogs go through the house. According to Detective Bormover, the dogs had just hit on an area near the basement stairs a few minutes before I called. And then below that, around 2:33, I heard from Agent Tammy Lee, who stated that the dog's hit was not substantiated. But the point is that there wasn't nothing. The dogs did show interest near the basement stairs, amongst others. But this is specifically mentioned in this particular report. Okay, I'm not going to take it further than that. I have been promising that I will do a little body language analysis of Amanda Knox. I will try to get to that sometime this weekend. I'm also, I've started a series on Patreon dealing with the social media element of the Watts case. And what is valuable, I think, in that discussion is it also sort of asks us about our consumption of social media. How much is enough? How much is too much? What is actually going on with these companies that we should know about? And what is the sort of end game of all of this? Where is all of this heading? Finally, if you're interested in the Watts case and nothing but the Watts case, let me encourage you just to expand your horizons. Go and listen to the John Benet Ramsey timeline. Those episodes are quite short, and it is good to get into that whole thing right now, because by the time there are 20 episodes up, you're going to feel really behind, especially when you get closer to Christmas. So it is a good thing just to get an idea of where everything was going with the Ramsey family before the events played out. So I want to encourage you guys to go and listen to that and familiarize yourself with a case that you might think you know very well. And I can guarantee you'll probably be surprised by what you discover just in the first and second episodes thus far. Thank you for listening. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys next time.